Hey everyone, good morning.
Good morning.
You'll be happy to know that this is the last Borough Board you have to attend for 2018. You won't have to attend a Borough Board until next year. Although some of you feel really sad about that, probably. I don't know which way. I see some new faces, so I think it's good if before we start the meeting, if we can just go around and introduce ourselves. Beginning right here to my right.
Good morning, Dick Edwards, First Vice Chair, Committee Board 9.
And Anthony Nicole, Chair of TV 1.
And Carter Booth, Chair of Committee Board 2.
Welcome.
Alita Camp, Chair of CB8.
Roberta Seymour, Chair of CB7.
Milsa Rama, Chair, Community Board 11.
Clayton Smith, representing Community Board 5.
Molly Hollister, Chair, Community Board 6.
David Ford, First Vice Chair, Community Board 3.
Start over there.
Wilfredo Lopez, Legislative Director for Ben Caleb's.
Lizette Chaparro from the Land Use Department at the Borough President's Office.
Kay Wester, Neighbors to Save Irvington House, also in CB3.
Carlos Ortiz, Department of Consumer Affairs.
Steve Antonani, Department of Consumer Affairs.
Luisa Lopez, Community Liaison at the Borough President's Office.
Brian Lewis, Community Liaison at the Borough President's Office.
Dave Bladham, Community Liaison for Board 7 and 9.
Richard Shane, Community Liaison, and Community Boards 1 and 2.
Lester Siegel, Community Board Unit at OMB.
Amy Slattery with Councilmember McWilliam. Jessica Mates, Borough President's Office.
Brian Lafferty, Community Liaison to Community Board 6, Special Projects.
All right, thank you. And congratulations on your election. The first order of business this morning is the adoption of the December 20th, 2018 Borough Board minutes.
So moved.
Okay, moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Abstentions? Noes, nays, all right, motion passes. Next one is the adoption of the November 15th, 2018 Borough Board minutes. Sorry we've gotten them out to you
Second.
late, but see you guys are eager to motion and second. So all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Seeing none, motion passes. The first presentation is by the Department of Consumer Affairs, and it will be on financial empowerment centers. So you feel free to come up and present from up here.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
My name is Steve Antonani. I'm a senior advisor over at the New York City Department of Consumer Affairs, so thanks for giving me some time to speak this morning and present to you all. I'm assuming some of you have some visibility and recognition with what the Department of Consumer Affairs is, but if you'll indulge me, I'll give you kind of a brief overview of what we do. I always say our agency has kind of a misnomer of sorts, given the kind of expansive scope that we have here for the city and our constituents. First and foremost, and our longest charge has been really business compliance and licensing. We license over 50 different industries across the city, somewhere over 80,000 businesses, everything from licensing laundromats, car washes, secondhand dealers, for example, the used car industry, and enforcing the city's broad consumer protection law. In addition to that, and most recently, we have an Office of Labor Policy and Standards that works as really a first of its kind municipal office in the country that works as an advocate for the city's workers, liaises very closely with the state's labor department and their enforcement agencies, as well as enforcing the city's municipal workplace laws. That includes things like the paid sick leave law in New York City, as well as the freelancers law and Fair Work Week, which is a scheduling law that gives workers some predictability in their schedule, particularly for retail and fast food workers. Lastly, and what I'll speak about a little bit more for the purposes of this presentation, is our Office of Financial Empowerment. This office was created under the Bloomberg administration and has several different charges. Most very broadly, they're designed and dedicated to uplifting our most vulnerable populations in the city and putting them and gearing them towards safe and healthy banking habits. They administer and work with tax preparers throughout the city, upcoming for our New York City free tax prep campaign that offers free, in many cases, individualized tax prep services to folks that in general are around the $60,000 a year income mark to get their taxes prepared for absolutely free. So there's going to be more to come there. I'm sure that myself or my colleagues will be working closely with you all or certainly your district managers and staff to ensure that the constituents are aware of this service and that they're utilizing it as needed. What I want to speak mostly about today and what I think is an ongoing issue in the city is really about creating those safe baking habits. And something that folks may or may not know, and I'm here to highlight, is that the city operates over 20 free financial empowerment centers throughout the city, including, I believe, 11 in Manhattan alone. These financial empowerment centers, like I said, provide free one-on-one financial counseling to anyone who lives in New York City or works in New York City. And they do a wider range of work, everything from basic banking, like creating and helping folks create a household budget, to more sophisticated guidance related to what kind of products may suit an individual depending on what their long-term or short-term goals are financially. We actually just marked the 10-year anniversary this past June for our financial empowerment centers. These centers work, which is incredible. We've helped New Yorkers tackle their debt, I believe, by $55 million to date. They've saved over $4 million to date. And really, we had a public awareness campaign dedicated to making sure that folks know that this service is out there. And something that we've seen and something that we're always communicating to folks is that yes, these centers these centers are free to their taxpayers and our taxpayers that are paying for these centers. So there's oftentimes a stigma saying, oh, well, it's free. How good can it be? Are these professionals? Are they giving me good guidance? Absolutely. And this is a service to folks. And as you can tell from the numbers I listed in terms of the millions in debt tackled and saved, these are things that are actually making a difference in the community. Most recently, we're always looking for ways to improve our centers and our financial counselors' work. Our Commissioner, Lorelei Salas, has recently taken on the issue of student debt in our city. As we know, this is a crisis that not only affects New Yorkers, but is a nationwide crisis as well. And we're doing trainings with we most recently completed a training with our financial counselors to ensure that they're aware of the suite of services that they can provide to New Yorkers and what they should be looking out for, particularly when we're discussing like predatory either phone calls that are coming from folks that claim that they're servicing their loan, or even what we're seeing on social media in terms of fraudulent like debt relief services. So that's one piece of things. I do want to highlight, just in terms of our work with student loans, I have my colleague Carlos is here as well, and we'll be distributing some examples of collateral that we have distributed throughout the city and things that we're happy to kind of provide to your offices in the future. One is a financial empowerment guide, which kind of gives a suite of services of what our Office of Financial Empowerment does. And the other is a tip guide specifically for student loans. As I mentioned, since the Commissioner has made this such a priority going forward, we're going to be creating more and more tips geared for specific constituencies related to student loans. That includes older adults that are pursuing their education, of course, young adults pursuing their education, and those already in distress. And I do want to mention as well that we have, through our consumer protection law, some enforcement authority over predatory practices that are occurring in this industry, including recent litigation that we put forward against one of the largest for-profit colleges in the city, Berkeley College, for alleged deceptive practices that they're applying to New Yorkers that believe that they're getting a certain type of education and one with some aid that may or may not be promised to them when they come to their offices. So that's kind of a quick overview of what our Office of Financial Empowerment does, our financial empowerment centers. Really, it's all about getting the word out. We're visiting folks throughout the city to just hammer this home that this is a free service. There's always folks when we're meeting with constituents that do not know about this. It's super easy to make an appointment. You could do so online by calling 311 and certainly by calling our offices. I'll leave some cards here. My colleague will as well. And we're happy to walk through constituents through the process so that they can get set up as soon as possible with a counselor. I'll open it up for questions if you have any, and if not, then I'll see you around. Sure.
Questions? No, sir?
Yes, I believe that your services also had at one point given the opportunity for CBOs who wanted to partner and to train staff. Is that something that is still happening or not happening?
Yeah, so I don't know if our counselors themselves, since we have a very explicit contract with them and the scope of the services, they won't be able to train CBOs directly, but certainly our outreach staff and the program managers in our Office of Financial Empowerment are on hand to visit community-based organizations and kind of walk them through certainly what we offer, and also, kind of making sure that they're communicating the appropriate, like messaging points to the constituents.
And just a follow-up question.
Yeah.
And is your collaboration with who exactly? So for instance, HPD collaborates with Arriva Corporation, which gives free credit counseling services to certain contractors in the city. I know because we're one of them.
Yeah, so Riva is one, I believe.
Oh, okay.
And I'm happy to
others.
follow up with you
Okay.
with the suite of folks that we have, but they're on contract. We're always looking for ideas and things of that nature. But I'm glad you mentioned the community based organizations, because not only are your offices important, but really it's about leveraging validated and trusted voices in the communities to make sure that they know about these services and are relaying it to folks.
I would just mention as well the Arriva HPD partnership. I mean, I know that HPD has housing ambassadors where they work with community-based organizations, but DCA also offers free financial counseling directed towards accessing affordable housing. And that partnership is called Ready to Rent, and we are in that partnership with HPD and Arriva. So those financial counseling services are our contractor.
As well. I was just going to ask if there's an awareness campaign out there, like the link kiosks or that kind of thing.
Yeah, so we had a limited campaign that ran over the summer, and that's not currently running, but that was at kiosks, and we targeted it to really the areas that are either like financial banking deserts, or where what's incredible about our office is we actually a few years back did a study on the and underbanked in the city that gave us zip code level data of where folks are either not in the traditional banking system for a variety of reasons, and really did a targeted outreach campaign there. That said, since particularly because that campaign has ended, we're doubling down our efforts, going to meetings such as this one, and using our contacts in various communities to kind of relay this information directly to constituents.
Other questions? I have, in terms of, you mentioned financial counselors.
Yep.
Is that equivalent to like financial advisors who are licensed and credentialed?
So they're definitely licensed and professional advisors. That said, they do not gear folks to specific products. So there's not like a fiduciary duty there, for example. There's a variety of reasons for that, including the fact that there's city dollars that are funding them. So we can say, this is the product for you, and it may not be ultimately for them. That said, we do have a sense of what are the appropriate credit building products and giving them a suite of options so that they're making the most informed decision when they choose those products. And we leverage our contacts with Moya and the IDNYC team and the banking relationships with that card as well. So while we're not directing people into specific products, we're giving them a sense of what these understanding the terminology behind some of these products and giving them a suite of options so that they can make those decisions with a little bit more clarity when that time comes.
And something I could also add to that as well, the financial counselors are great because they can also give free referrals to other services, like NILAC for free legal services,
right,
or the financial planners of New York, which really deal with this retirement or investing or savings. And you can get 3 free sessions with the financial planners of New York if you get a referral from one of our centers.
Financial Planners of New York?
I believe that's the name, but I can confirm that.
Who are they?
They're a nonprofit that offers financial planning. Yeah.
That's awesome. I'll recognize you next.
Just a follow-up question to Alden. When someone comes for those services,
Yeah.
is there an income threshold or is it open to everyone?
Open to anyone. And like I said, they don't need to necessarily live in the city. If they work in the city, that also makes them eligible for these centers. So,
Thank you.
yep.
Thank you. Do you have anything specifically geared towards senior citizens?
Yeah, so we do have a suite of information that's available on our website. Whether that's on hand at the financial empowerment centers, that's another question. I can circle back with you on that. But we do have things related to common scams that older city residents may encounter, things related to identity theft. We have an annual Shred Fest where in all 5 boroughs over the course of one weekend, folks can kind of shred their most sensitive information. Always a popular event for our agency, but we have a bunch of different pieces of material as well as a pamphlet directly for that community as well.
That would be great if that were available to
Yep.
be handed out at our meetings.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll follow up with
Thank you.
Has there ever been an example where you have a workshop or a forum or something particularly with a community board at the community board office or office hours or something? Is that something you guys would be amenable to?
It's something we're amenable to. I will say that, again, just because of the contract and the scope of their work, I'm not sure that counselors would be able to be on hand at the community board offices. Oftentimes, it's not that far away, given the geographic distribution of these places. But certainly, we're available to give a workshop and do, for example, on-hand signups for counseling sessions right then and there. So we're definitely able to do that, and we have those services available.
And if you have some kind of pamphlets or something to write, we have a resource fair in January with Carlina, Councilmember Rivera,
Mhm.
so it would be great to be able to have
Yeah,
some kind of pamphlets.
absolutely.
I think we're going to that resource fair actually.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
all right.
We'll see you there.
That makes sense.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you so
thank
much
you.
for the
Happy
presentation.
holidays,
Thank
everybody.
We had, I think, 2 or 3 people join us since the presentation, and in the beginning of the meeting, everybody had an opportunity to introduce themselves, so we'd like to afford that opportunity to whoever might have come in a little late.
Sure, I'm the Lesser, I'm from Keith Powers' office.
Okay, welcome. Anyone else? Okay.
Sorry, good morning, I was, had a motor in my
Oh,
mouth. I'm Bianca Medina from Councilmember Ayala's office, good morning.
Good morning. So next we'll do the report outs. For the Borough President report out, some of these issues you're already aware of, but you know that community board applications are now open live, so we hope that you can share those links to people so they can start reapplying if they're current community board members, or if they're new applicants, they can apply as well online. We also have open our 2019 Manhattan Cultural Tourism Grants. So those are also available off of our website. If you can promote that as well to your cultural organizations and nonprofits. Capital funding.
On the community board applications, there are some boards and some council members that may have vacancies. And speaking to the borough president, if you want to fill those vacancies prior to April, you can. If you want to wait until April and do it with all the reappointments, then we can do that as well. So I'll be reaching out to those council members who have vacancies to see how they want to proceed.
So with the community board applications, please help promote that. The cultural tourism grants as well, please help promote that so we can get a good applicant pool, folks wanting those kind of grants. We also have a link so that you can schedule capital funding meetings with our budget team in anticipation of capital budgets. So that's for schools and for nonprofits, and you can schedule a meeting with the budget team so they can go over requests. We also have our holiday diaper drive. You see the crib when you first walk in, some people look and say, wow, this office is so child friendly. But that's there for display only, and that's for the you'll take it. Yeah, it looks very comfortable. That's for display only at the moment. But we definitely have our diaper drive, holiday diaper drive. We also continue with our regular workshops in the Northern Manhattan office every third Wednesday of the month. The next upcoming one is dealing with a workshop to combat teen relationship abuse. It's the RAP program, the Teen Relationship Abuse Prevention Program, and those are very good workshops to attend and recommend people to attend.
Those are going to be every month. We're going to have monthly workshops because this is an important issue, and we've partnered with RAP to do monthly workshops on teen relationship abuse, and they were reaching out to teachers and parents, and they're perfect every third Wednesday.
Is it the same agenda?
Yeah.
So you'll miss something.
Right, no.
Perfect.
Good. And next, I'll turn to Jessica to talk a little bit about Two Bridges, our lawsuit, and also the Garment Center. Actually, James, if you want. Two Bridges and then the Garment District.
The Garment District, just an update. The city council and land use folks are in the room. You should all jump in because I'm going to give my non-land use description of what's going on, which is basically that people love the zoning restrictions are being lifted or they just were in the city council, and we're a little bit pleased because the result of all of our planning and pre-planning was that there actually is an IDA program in place where there's going to be tax incentive for landlords that continue to rent to garment manufacturing industries. There's going to be a purchase of a new building, the square footage involved in all this, and the bid has made a decision to actually support manufacturing, garment manufacturing businesses that stay in the area as opposed to those that move out. So we're cautiously optimistic about that. Still a lot of work to do, but I think that there was some success in saving the Garment Center. And Two Bridges, we can't say too much because there's a lawsuit, but do you want to say where we are on the lawsuit?
Absolutely. So this is not for anything in public, right? Because we don't want to.
Oh wait, well, this is being filmed and it's online.
Live
There's live streams.
It's a public meeting.
Of course, that's good. So we'll just.
So what happens in Borough Board can't stay in Borough Board.
is that we're doing a lawsuit with the city council. We're suing the mayor's administration on the Two Bridges towers, which we feel like are not a minor modification at all. They're major. And again, in my layperson's terms, and the city council has retained outside counsel to represent us and the city council and that. So that's basically
right. And there's at least a few months pause on anything happening until the hearing. So it's.
That's basically it. I wanted to just add one other event because it's today. People know that we've been involved in this crazy Mayor in Manhattan week, which
Yes.
is crazy, right?
Yes.
And there's a lot of events and press conferences and all kinds of things. But one, I think, really good thing is that our Northern Manhattan office today is partnering with the Landmarks Preservation Commission to do a workshop for homeowners in Northern Manhattan who are in landmark districts or buildings, because they actually provide grants for people who need to, keep their buildings compliant. and they're gonna do workshops about, you know, the kinds of things you might want to or need to do, and how you apply for those grants. And that's gonna be at City College tonight at 6:30, and we'll give you the details if anyone's interested, but it should be a really good workshop.
I think the only thing just to add on Garment Center, Lizette Chaparro was our planner who worked on that. Of course, she was working CB4 before, so she's done fantastic work. And then also we've had recent progress on the IDA front. Looks like we'll have some more square footage than we thought, which is fantastic. And of course, it'll be this afternoon at the stated meeting when the zoning will be final with it. So.
Are we at 275? Is that what it looks like for IDA?
I think it's a little in flux, but was that
So
200?
we have 2,000, or sorry, EDC has 2,000 that have 200,000 that have been signed up in the IDA program, and an additional 70,000 are in discussion with, you know, on track to sign letters of commitment.
Is everybody familiar with that issue? Because you have this, the square footage. Thank you for that. You wanted to...
Okay. And currently for the last month, and this will be ongoing, the city has been holding meetings at different NYCHA developments, New York City Public Housing Authority, regarding the RAD program and this public-private venture. So if it hasn't come to your community board or your district, it's coming soon near you. Some of them have gone on to the second meeting and phase, and the community's been going out, and our land use staff and our community affairs staff has also been attending this to get a pulse of where the community is at. There are some communities that are in favor of the plan because it would mean repairs, and some others that have some concerns. Yes?
I just heard this morning that Kevin Norman, who is part of the Teamsters, had invited CB7 and other boards to go to Cambridge, Massachusetts to see a RAD there that's very good. And they have reserved a bus for January 11th, and we have 20 seats on the bus. So, so, you know, if each board wants to send a rep to go, we'll get the details. But they called Madeline, yes, I guess last night, to tell her. We had met with Kevin a couple weeks ago, and he offered to rent a bus and take us up there.
Kevin Norman is the Housing Division head at Local 237.
Right.
And they're the ones who represent
They've been up there.
Most of the employees
right.
of the New York City
They represent the employees, and they also, many of their employees live in NYCHA developments. So it'll be interesting because they've been up there. They were very impressed with how well run it is.
Well, we've had some RADs here.
Yeah.
In New York. And
right,
I think it'll be good to maybe make that comparison, but I think the big problem in New York is there is no other public housing authority the size of this one.
Right.
The closest one is like a tenth, maybe 25% the size of New York.
Yeah.
And because of the big capital problems that NYCHA was not able to get to, that has been the problem with those RADs that was passed by this current mayor several years ago. The developers said they took a tour, they got documents, but still when they went in to do the work and after everything was signed, that the extent of repairs needed was much, much worse, and the violations were worse and the repairs were more extensive, and so that has been the problem. So we got that information so we can follow up and maybe join them.
Two other things, in terms of the city hall in your borough, there's this one program that I just want to highlight for you, which you might know already, but it's Love Your Local, and it's out of SBS. But you know, for that small business that you often frequent, whether it's that flower shop that might not survive but it's been around for 30 years, or that bagel shop, or that pet store, If you go on Love Your Local, there's these small grants up to $2 million, but the grants go up to $90,000 for a small business. They started issuing them this week, but they opened up a new grant cycle yesterday. Please direct small businesses to that Small Business Services webpage, Love Your Local. They register, they work with a business consultant in terms of how to figure out how these small businesses could transform or innovate or change with the new demographics or with the new changing economies. So I think that's a program that's not often known, but I've seen, based on this week's mayor in your borough, that small businesses are starting to get some of these grants. And I think, it's not a lot of competition because a lot of people don't know about it yet. So if you know that one or two or three great small businesses, try to kind of hold their hand through that process. It's not laborious, it's not intense, and the payoff seems to be good for these small businesses in terms of getting money, not a loan, but an actual grant to help them think through how they'll be able to survive.
Where is this located?
You can go to the SBS website.
It's small business.
Yeah, small business services. And then the name of the program is Love Your Local. And another thing I would say that will be increasingly on the radars of community boards is that you may still have 99 problems, but marijuana is not going to be one of them. But it may raise another 99 problems. So I think that these are issues that are going to be ever increasing. Everything from as mundane to while breathalyzers might be able to measure alcohol, presence. How do you measure marijuana presence for your cab drivers or bus drivers or any other driver? And so you need special breathalyzers for that. In terms of for land use and zoning, in terms of nuisance, and in terms of siting of the dispensaries, and maybe I have dreams of owning like a 14-story vertical farm where we're doing indoor growing of different seeds, and then another building where we're liquefying it. I'm fanciful in my thinking. But if you look at the experiences that went before us, and the most recent of which is Toronto, I mean these are sizable, significant changes that occur as a result of this. And I know today at 11 o'clock, the mayor is going to roll out. He's going to speak about the results of the task force that they put together. I'm not sure if any community boards were involved in that. If not, shame on them in that process, because they should involve community boards. Because I think in many ways community boards are going to be ground zero, and not only should they involve community boards, but I imagine even the type of 311 complaint categories might even have to evolve and change somewhat. So there's a lot of things that they may not even anticipate that community boards have an intimate and ground level knowledge of what might happen when you roll such a large scale legalization policy out. So I think that they're going to release the report today. It behooves everyone to read it, look it over, and then see how community boards might establish cross committee, workshops or task force to deal with this once any movement happens on the state level. So I think that's another big issue that's coming down the pike. So now next we'll start with community board updates. We'll start with community board 1.
Good morning, thank you. Welcome to community board 1. I may sound like a broken record, but a couple of updates. We had good news. We have a small local school, PS 150, that had property in a leased building, and the lease was up. Unfortunately, through the efforts of parents and the borough president, all elected officials, and community board, that lease is being extended until a new school, which is going to be built here, is open. So that's the good news. The bad news is it's still a net loss of school seats in CB1, and it points to the issue of how SCA and GOE cite a school or decide, or how they even communicate with parents and community boards about these issues. But at least it's good news for at least the next 3 or 4 years. The big issue from a land use perspective is the Manhattan Detention Center. We all know that Rikers Island needs to be closed and a new solution be found. But this points to almost something I heard you talk about, Alden, is that the community board is learning things after the fact. The mayor had a meeting yesterday, and even at that meeting, which to me was like a summit meeting, we heard more facts that we had not heard before, when I was leaving, I talked to a person there, and she said, I said, what did you think of the meeting? She said, well, it was good, but it was like being told I'm going to be shot, but don't worry, I'll pay for your medical expenses. So we have a lot of work to do on this MDC. And then the last thing is resiliency. It's now 6 years since Superstorm Sandy. In CB1, now the Port Authority and MTA and Con Ed have hardened some of their own infrastructure, but the city has done nothing. We still can't even get a meeting with the Office of Recovery and Resiliency about our plans. But part of the good news is that Battery Park City Authority, which covers the west side of our community board, is looking at building a resiliency plan there. And we talked about that at our board meeting last night. We endorse it because it's a sizable part of our coastline. But funding will be an issue there. Who's going to pay for this? So those are the major issues we're dealing with. Happy holidays, everyone.
Thank you for your report. Community Board 2?
Good morning, I'm Carter Booth, I'm the new chair of Community Board 2. By way of a backdrop, I've been a member of CB2 for the last 12 years, so I've been around for a little bit. And most recently served as chair of our SLA licensing committee. I wanted to thank Terry for her guidance over the last 2 years and thank her for doing such a great job. Last month, Dan Miller, our first vice chair, was here, and he talked a little bit about one of the projects that we have been facing for some time, and that's the St. John's Terminal Building, which is across from Pier 40. Some fairly extensive exchange that occurred during the ULURP process in the past, and some air rights were transferred, and that money from that, about $100 million, we went to repair the pilings under Pier 40. Since then, that ULURP, the underlying property in the southern part of St. John's Terminal Building was acquired by a new developer, Oxford Properties, and they presented plans in October to redevelop the site commercially, to increase it to, it's about 1.3 million square feet, so it's a pretty large project. It's a big testament to the success of Hudson Square and the rezoning there and creating a pretty mixed-use, vibrant area. And this is sort of a long preface to the fact that on Monday we had an announcement that Google's creating a new campus down in Hudson Square, which is going to include that building as well as space in 2 others, and for a 1.7 million square foot campus, which is a huge campus. And as everyone here knows, that's really exciting news. There's also lots of questions and concerns, and lots to learn about the project. At this point, the St. John's building is only covered under a letter of intent, so there's a lot of work for us to find out more about the project. It is an as of right project, but now that Google is the tenant, and most of the answers that we got from Oxford Properties when they were developing it depends on the tenant, and now there is a tenant, so it's going to be a subject of discussion for many years to come. Another issue that Dan had mentioned last month was the Elizabeth Street Garden, which is a very special community garden in our community board. The ULURP process is underway for the Haven Green project to build affordable senior housing at the garden, and that's started, and a number of our committees are participating in the process, which is going to conclude next month. There's been quite a bit of discussion so far, citing a lack of consideration of alternative design plans that maybe would have preserved more of the garden space, as well as preserving the proposed senior housing and the commercial retail elements. And lastly, Department of City Planning is expected to announce the formation of an advisory board on to participate in a planning study of the Soho and NoHo zoning as it currently stands, and I think that that's going to be the focus for our community board for some time as well, going into the future. So thank you. Happy holidays.
Thank you. And again, congratulations. Community Board 3?
Yes, hi, I'm David Ford. On behalf of Alicia Lewis Coleman and the entire Community Board 3, we wish everybody a very happy holiday season. We too are dealing with the detention center, that's our board as well. of course, the Two Bridges situation and the residual issues with that. The L train is an ongoing issue. Traffic, the new traffic patterns that they're establishing, especially on the side streets like 12th and 13th Street, 15th Street, people's loss of parking spaces, the range of issues with the L train is ongoing. We're working on reorganizing the process in our SLA committee. We've had an issue where there are times where people are in meetings to 1 o'clock in the morning. And that's unacceptable. We think that the process may be too onerous on our part. So we're looking at ways of streamlining it. We do have a chair of that committee that's been on the committee for over 20 years, so that's another issue in dealing with that person and their ownership of the committee. We're also going to...
No one, they can't relate, no one here can relate.
We're also going to start up, Alicia's starting up the Ethics and Disciplinary Committee because we do have a couple of disciplinary issues on our board with board members and their behavior. One of the issues...
Actually, as you guys make some progress in that, maybe if you could share some of that, the Ethics and Disciplinary Committee.
Yes, please.
Live stream.
That's something that we might
General,
want to
Getting
consider.
people to play nice.
We might want to consider just helping ourselves out on that at some point. Maybe in an off meeting.
And it's a very difficult issue because people are appointed and people may have affiliations and it's a whole thing. And you live next door to people. Fortunately, I live next door to no one on the board. The other issue that's coming up again is the Rivington House issue. Mount Sinai Beth Israel is in talks to move their whole behavioral health unit to Rivington House. And while that was happening, they were actually negotiating with some people in the community, including my colleague Kay Webster. So people in the community feel blindsided by that again. And lastly, with the charter revision, Jim, I was asked, are they going to meet with boards? Is there a meeting pending or to be set up, especially, between this January and March period?
Not that I know of individually, but...
Or collectively?
They may do something collectively, and I have offered, I sent around an email probably a couple of weeks ago that said I was happy, especially during this sort of January to March period, as boards are sort of deciding what they really want to push for, to meet. And I think it should, if there's an opportunity, it would be great for it to be with, a full board. I could do, but we want to get the public interested as well, so we want to sort of use it as a twofold thing, both to guide, to give you guys information so that you can craft your proposals, but also to let the public know what's happening and so that they can sort of weigh in. So if that, I'm happy to work with you on arranging that. And if I can, I'll bring, 1 or 2 staff people from the commission. So I'm more than happy to do that.
Okay, thank you.
I have, time sort of set aside for that in my schedule.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. CB4?
Hi, good morning, everybody. First thing I want to announce is our district manager, Jesse Bodine, and his wife, Dana, had a baby. Baby boy. Name I do not know yet, but the naming will be tomorrow. Okay. We're working on ongoing projects. It's the same. Hopefully each one is moving along. Pier 97, which is at the very northwest corner of our district. It's around 59th Street. Was the recipient recently of $50 million. Well, the whole north end of the park, Hudson River Park. $50 million to finish that. We've had a number of short bets. What do people want on the pier, active, passive, whatever, combination. It's ongoing. We've had 2 so far with the architects, and we've got money to spend, or the park has money to spend. And very appreciative of their extending, well, what do you want? Involving people, not just the architects out in, I don't know if they're from Denmark. They seem to be picking a lot of Scandinavian architects. Anyway, it won't be just coming down from Copenhagen and this this is what we gotta do. We're having people have input on it. Again, also the bus terminal, replacement of the bus terminal, ongoing. We're still at the point where we're inputting in the pre-scoping. Well, of course, it's gonna be an EIS. And so we're not even at the EIS stage yet. We're moving towards the EIS, but the scoping is what will be in the EIS. And we're almost finished with that. And again, very appreciative of the Port Authority. It's so different from what it had been before. And this is probably because Borough President, State Assembly members, State Senate members have been pushing Port Authority to wake up, open your eyes, and look at the people around you. Not just the people who come into the Port Authority from New Jersey and use it. We've had also some issues about schools. One school, the lease is up. It's a middle school. And we have an elementary school, PS 111, that has a bunch of empty rooms, empty classes. So they want to put one on the other. And it's not smooth. It's not smooth. Just the fact that it's a middle school and an elementary school, that raises issues. Raises issues about moving people around in the 111 school. A lot of special education students maybe will have to be in the basement. Raises issues which, interestingly enough, when it was first presented to us, we thought, oh, easy, right? We hadn't heard from anybody, but then when we started reaching out and people started talking off the record, we started hearing. The Parents Association hadn't put out any official statement, but we're hearing from members. And we encourage them to come to our full board meeting. And what we thought was going to be an easy piece of, yes, the board approves, supports, didn't happen that way. And so we're encouraging people to talk to each other, which sometimes doesn't happen without outside help. Surprisingly. Congratulate you guys on Google, and I just hope your success doesn't detract from our campus, because we have a major campus, and Google's been a really good neighbor. It does a lot in the community. Yes, people say it could do more. Of course it could do more, but it does what it does, and it does a lot. And they're expanding still in our community. When many of you know on Pier 57, which is as far west as they can go without going into the middle of the river. They started on 8th Avenue, 9th Avenue, 10th Avenue, and now we're at 11th, 12th Avenue. And if you figure the end of the pier is 13th Avenue. Okay? That's as far as they can go. So that's why I guess they're looking for more space down in your neighborhood. So I just hope your success doesn't take from us. And the charter revision, we created a special task force, but we asked our committees that was on all their December meetings. Every committee, relevant or not, was asked to look if there's something in the charter. Asking them, we put all those links down for them. If there's something that they might want to look at and change, modify the process, something that they would like to be in the charter that's not there. So we asked our committees to take a look at it, feeding from there to our special charter revision. And they will sort of sift everything together and look at it and put it in an organized manner to present to the full board. In probably not January, probably February. And we'll be able to report back. Happy New Year, everybody. The best to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
CB5?
I'm Clayton Smith, representing Vicky Barbero can't be here today for Community Board 5. I will be pretty quick about a couple things. One is the charter revision work. I think we're all very excited about it. We're just starting to gear up about how to best formulate the recommendations we'll have about that. One thing that I know we are looking at is proposing changes to the seeker manual for our land use decisions. It's something that has come up in many different ways, different elements of that, the problems of how it's currently formulated, and so we think the charter revision might be a good opportunity to look at that. One other thing which I'm happy to be a cheerleader for, because I am the chair of the Parks and Public Spaces Committee of CB5, is the Parks Department window for commercial and marketing event applications is 21 days. It always has been. We have been on the record for about 7 years now asking for 45 days, knowing that'll never happen, but thinking that maybe we might get 30. Crickets, that's not surprising, that hasn't gone anywhere. There's a lot of support for this in the council. We've had a lot of conversations with people. It's extremely reasonable. 30 days would mean that applicants would have enough time to appear before the community board. In our experience, we have learned that simply attending the public hearing and having to air the proposed event ahead of time makes it better. Either because there's just sunlight on it and they have to show up and talk about it, or because as a process, the community board process and public review, we ask for very specific changes to the event, which then they commit to, and it just makes things better. Reduced corporate signage, lower volumes of amplified sound, better security plans, recycling stations, and any number of things. So this issue has come up again because this round we had not 1, not 2, but 7 commercial event applications in Bryant Park that we were not able to hear at full board before they occurred, because the permits came in at 21 days. Usually that happens right after the prior round's committee meeting. We do not fault the Bryant Park Corporation for this, because they were not the applicants. There are outside sources that do this. They have been very good partners, so we don't wish to demonize them in this process, but it is simply a city rule that we think should be changed. We actually heard from event operators at our committee meeting. We talked about this publicly. The private companies who are hired by Johnson & Johnson or whoever or Samsung to run their event, and they said it would help them enormously to have 30 days as opposed to 21, because turning these events around on such a tight schedule is also just logistically difficult. So there's very few people who believe it's a bad idea, and we think that charter revision might also be another opportunity to bring this up. The big one for us this round was the application from JP Morgan Chase for a new tower at 270 Park Avenue. This is the first application to come in after the Greater East Midtown rezoning. We spent, as everyone in here knows, many years working on the Greater East Midtown rezoning and went through many incarnations. One thing that we did get in the final rezoning was in the zoning law was that any development over a certain FAR would be required to give the public 10,000 square feet of public space in the form of a POPs as part of that project. This site was one of many sites that Community Board 5 said, this is a list of sites that we believe are likely to be developed, or at least possible, that should have been in scope, that the city planning should have considered. This site was one of many. The city planning responded and said, no way, there's no chance, it'll never be developed, it's not in scope. First out of the gate. Right. And they have come to us with not a variance application, but a zoning text amendment to change the rules for them so that their public space can be 7,000 square feet instead. There are a lot of logistical reasons that we understand about the train shed underneath the proximity to Grand Central. But the fact of the matter is the applicant hired an army of consultants and fancy renderings and all the rest, and did not have anything to offer back to the public for that missing 3,000 square feet. When we asked, did you consider putting the 3,000 on the other block or the through block, or a raised or a terrace level or anything like that, the answer was like, you wouldn't like that, that wouldn't be a nice space. Not, we looked at that and we deemed blah, blah, blah. So their only response when it came to what is the public getting for allowing a zoning text amendment so that you don't have to reach the bare minimum that we passed as the zoning law, which by the way was a compromise, said, well, we're widening the sidewalks. The fact of the matter is they are widening the sidewalks to accommodate doubling the labor force that's going to be in that building. There'll be 12,500 employees in this building. It'll be the building with the largest FAR in New York City history. Widening the sidewalks doesn't come anywhere near compensating for the loss of the public space that they're asking for. So there's no proposed new transit capacity, transit entrances, no public restrooms in the POPs that they are proposing. Number one, I would say precedent. We had a unanimous denial. Precedent seemed to be the most important issue here. That it was a terrible idea to begin hearing Greater East Midtown projects with an exception. An exception that lowers the bar even further than the work that had been done for years. And number two, because they're not applying for a variance, it wouldn't be seen as an exception. A zoning text amendment is serious business. Even though the text they're proposing would be specific to this site and would not apply to other sites, the fact of the matter is that any other developer could say, well, we want a zoning text amendment. We think it's a terrible precedent, not only for East Midtown, but for the whole city, for a developer to say, well, now we have this rezoning, but we don't like it, so how about this zoning text amendment instead? So we're just at the beginning of this fight. We find it pretty outrageous, and we could use all the support we can get.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
no,
I
go
was
ahead,
just gonna
sorry.
say, when you see a way for anyone to support you, just send around.
CB6 is all over it.
Yeah, for
All
us
of
too,
us.
if whatever we could do. I don't know what the
help
board
you.
would say,
Yeah.
I'm just speaking to bring it to
It's
the
not-
board, because they do impact the city, and they are outrageous. I mean, it is really outrageous when you think about it, so.
We need that space, and we need that, whatever they can give back, we need something.
And the idea of a zoning text amendment when it's just been zoned is ridiculous.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll start with the charter revisions. Our budget and government affairs team will be working on that, but we've addressed it to all of our chairs. And I did mention that the chairs of all the Manhattan Borough, we've met and kind of talked a little bit about how we would deal with the charter revisions. And it would be nice to have some kind of cohesive resolution that we all agree on. And I think the main things are zoning, city planning issues. So we'll be talking, I guess, separately in some meetings about that. The other big update, and again, I don't know, I guess we could have it on record here because it's not confirmed, but rumor has it that, and we've talked to DHS a little bit about this, but HRA and DHS are looking at a site on 17th and 1st Avenue to have a women's and children's shelter. And we already have our fair share of shelters. We have 4 large shelters. Well, we have 4 shelters, and one of them is the largest shelter in the city. It's the 30th Street Men's Shelter. So we're not opposed to this, or as a community board, and we've just sent a note to DHS, and we've talked to them and sent a letter, but we want to be sure we can be part of the conversation if they do in fact take over the city-owned building that has 186 units in it, and put a bunch of kids in there with our schools at overcapacity now in that area. Where would the kids go? Just transportation's very congested there, and besides just buses, and if they're busing kids, and so we just need to be part of the conversation. So we just to put that on your radar. It's not confirmed. They're looking at it if it's a viable site, but it seems like it's moving forward. So it's Gilman Hall. I'm sorry, I didn't say that. Gilman Hall. And then we had a meeting, big community outreach last week with PDC and the mayor's office for the ESCR, East Side Coastal Resiliency. And there's still a lot of pushback and concern. It's mostly CB3 issues with the East River Park, but Sty Cove and some other waterfront in CB6 is maybe closed down for longer than we thought, so we're just waiting to hear more about that. The L train is also a waterfront issue for us because we have not a very connected waterfront above 23rd. It's some dangerous bike and pedestrian pathways, and so really fighting with, talking to DOT about getting those cleaned up, and we've had resolutions passed to make it safer, and they just need to put paint on the ground and barriers up and make it safer for pedestrians. That area will be a lot more heavily trafficked once the L train project starts in ESCR as well. So there's a 20th Street ferry added. We just need better connectivity on our waterfront there. So we have, again, several resolutions kind of guiding them and telling them what we need to see there. I think that's it. Oh, town hall last night. So in the town hall, a lot of bus layover issues. A lot of people complained about buses idling. So I mean, maybe besides the Port Authority bus station, we need another bus station in New York City or in Manhattan. You know, I think that on the east side we have buses laid over, MTA buses, all sorts of commuter buses in our bus lanes and in our, and idling. And not just idling, but just taking up traffic.
And the express buses that come through the tunnel or
Express
from
buses.
the other
And so it's a big problem, and we've again sent resolutions and done walkthroughs with MTA and DOT where we think we would recommend they park, and of course they don't because they're further off to the side, closer to the FDR. They want to park closer to 3rd and Lexington and so on. So it's a problem throughout the city, and it brought up a lot last night at Town Hall, as was the super calls and the zoning issues brought up several times. So that's it.
CB7?
We have something called term limits for co-chairs. It was voted in our bylaws in 2013. So in 2019, 8 of our co-chairs are term limited. And some of the committees have been really receptive to the co-chairs to stepping down. But I have a few co-chairs who I have to kind of have someone watching my back because they own their chairmanship, and their life will be destroyed when I replace them. And it's really hard. It's been very uncomfortable, but it's also very exciting because new chairs will bring some new goals and bring some new life. And actually, several of the chairs that I'm replacing have been very problematic chairs. They don't have good meeting management. Their meetings go on to midnight sometimes. So they lose members of the committee. So, two of the committees are down to 4 people. They're lucky if they get 3 or 4 people for a quorum. So I think it's going to be very exciting, but it's challenging. The super talls, we have two buildings that are both, one is being challenged. The challenge just went in yesterday on the 66th Street. The developer went to city planning with a 25-foot high building, and then has been walking around telling everyone it's going to be 74 stories. We met with Silverstein Group, who bought all the ABC properties. And we're starting what I'm calling the ABC task force, just because Silverstein doesn't mean much to people. And we met with them. They were very receptive. So the ones on West End Avenue, which overlook the river, are the first ones. They're going to start doing something in 2 years. And then they have a big campus on the between 66 and 67th Street on Columbus, going down the blocks. They could build they could go almost 1,000 feet. It's awesome. So we're hoping that we can talk to Larry and some of his people and convince them that doing that will ruin his reputation. And have it lower. I mean, whatever it takes, that Central Park will be in permanent shadow. So we have a problem with a shelter. There was a bad performing shelter on 95th Street. We stopped having CAGs because they were useless. So DHS has decided to close that shelter. They got a new provider, but they're moving to a building on 94th Street with the same owner. And the community was up in arms at our December full board meeting, and we passed a resolution asking that DHS be more forthcoming about, before citing a shelter, that we could have more community input, that we could have a ceiling to cellar walk through the building, and that the notice not be 2 days before they hold a public meeting. And we've people have looked at the charter. We're pulling together some of our points. We thought we had to do it by the end of December, so I'm happy to hear that we have a little more lead time.
Thank you. CB8?
Okay, on the charter task force, the task force met and we have a lengthy list of resolution with a lengthy list of items for the charter commission to look at. So I'll send that around to everyone. It should be finalized today just to give you ideas if you want any of them.
Please, yes.
We're concerned about the Target, and which has been sprouting up all over the city. We don't know, there's no definition of variety store versus department store, and one is allowed and one isn't allowed. And we're just concerned about an influx of chain stores, and this store in particular, it's on a street, bless you, on a side street for deliveries with these major trucks, and we don't know how they're gonna do anything, and they're not living in New York, so they don't really get it, but they have a host of high-paid consultants and lawyers, and so that's been something that we've been fighting, the height limit in the zoning. The Fetner, we're having a hearing on this infill project, that's 50-50, where the mayor is using 3 mayoral zoning overrides on things like the sky exposure plane and the distance between windows, and we're really concerned about that. I asked a question last night, there was no real answer on that, but the public, I don't think, is even aware of these zoning overrides. We don't know where they come from, we don't know where the authority is. We think they should be used for the public interest, not to benefit the developer of a 50-story mixed-use building that's paying the city minimal amounts of rent and money. For small business, on a good note, I think we're starting quarterly meetings with owners of small businesses as breakfast meetings, working with the Manhattan Chamber of Commerce to hear what their concerns are and to help them, to let them know what resources are, to hopefully keep them in the neighborhood. Air rights are an issue with synagogues and churches selling air rights like crazy. We'd like to do something with that. Basically, it's an overall frustration with land use process. And at the dinner that we had, I'm excited to think of working with all the boards on zoning or land use issues to have some solidarity and hopefully input in the city for this. And I don't know if any of you have experienced this, but sometimes it seems that applicants come before the full board as opposed to going before committee because they think they're going to get an easier pass, like they kind of bypass what they're supposed to do. We had an applicant who came, they come without information. I think they just expect the board will approve applications. People start asking questions and they're just not prepared to answer. They don't tell us when the deadline is for board consult or board input into the process with whatever the city agency is, and then they come with that information. So when we ask them to come back, we're told, oh, well, you'll miss your opportunity to have any input, but they don't have answers. So it was very frustrating, and this was Tuesday night, and I wish that there were more communication between city agencies so that there was an article in Patch that there's a 6-story building going up. Well, we know it's not a 6-story building, it's gonna be some outrageous height. But they file 6 stories, that department doesn't talk to the other department, so they're able to just to do this and have decisions made or get that foundation going in case anything changes, and then they ask for a minor, I guess, modification, so. And that's that. And happy holidays, everyone.
You mentioned the town hall last night. Another issue that came up that was, I found the response a little troubling or not reassuring, was the issue of after-hour variances, and the response of the commissioner on that regard was very telling in terms of.
Yeah, we had a big issue with a 4 o'clock a.m. start time on a Saturday. And that was after they went till 9 o'clock at night, the night before. And this was for cement. So one of the architects on the board calculated they would need to do this 20 more times. So the council member for that district called the DOB and got that stopped. But these variances are really a problem.
Alderman, what was his response? He was basically saying, we'll look into it, we don't really know, but if they need to, they need to, kind of thing? Yeah,
the mayor tried to even prod him on, what are instances that you absolutely will decline after our variance. And he says no, like he refused to, like apparently there are no like, lines drawn in the sand. Like he was like, no, like everything could possibly be, reasonable for a variance. And like even the mayor was trying to like push him, but he refused to.
Is that supposed to be for safety reasons? But
safety is considered anything.
Yeah.
I think safety is a euphemism for
Just
profit.
like everything
Yes.
for national security.
Exactly.
And the reality is that this is a big revenue generator for the city. They make millions and millions of dollars on these after-hour permits. So,
If they stop giving tax abatements, then
But thank you for.
thank you.
CB9?
Yes, good morning. Victor Edwards, First Vice Chair, sitting in for Padmore John. Just a few quick items. First, bless you.
Bless you.
Community Board 9 continues its efforts around incarceration. We met this past week with Project Liberation, who dedicates their efforts towards women in particular, in prisons and when they come out, issues that are not addressed to some of the other well-known organizations. We're also looking to participate in the Beyond the Bars program with Columbia University in March. They have an annual conference about incarceration and how it affects the community, so we're looking to participate in that. Secondly, we met with DOT 2 weeks ago regarding removal of one lane on Amsterdam Avenue from 110th to 155th Street and an addition of a bike lane. We just wanted to know how it's going to impact the community from a environmental standpoint and a traffic standpoint. Still having conversations with them on that. Also met with the Mayor's Office on filming regarding oversaturation of filming in particular streets in West Harlem area and some real difficult traffic issues there. So we're continuing to working on that. And lastly, forming a task force around the revisions, charter revisions as well, to press that issue. We have a lot of people been on the board for quite some time, and losing that knowledge, especially around land use and development, I think would be critical. So we're moving forward with that. Happy holidays to all. Thank you.
Thank you. CB10? CB11?
Happy holidays to all. This makes my 1 year anniversary from the coming to the first Borough Board, my 11th meeting.
Date to date, wow.
13th meeting. So here's my whole list on what I was going to discuss, but I'm going to condense it to this. Anyway, all right. So this week we had a meeting with Children's Aid and the developer who actually bought 3 of their lots, Owen Everhart. And originally the developer wanted to build luxury housing. The developer has never come to the community forums that Children's Aid held when there was some significant substantial pushback from the community, and now they have reimagined the project that they'd like to do on that those lots with Mount Sinai to bring in different clinical services that are currently on 98th Street to 102nd Street, and no kind of substance abuse or opioid kind of treatment centers. And they are currently talking to Children's Aid about the potential selling of the other 2 lots so that they then can make a bigger commercial site for the clinic and have Children's Aid become a condo owner within the project, where they will build them again a basketball court, which they significantly lost, would potentially build them back a small park that they are currently losing, and then giving them significant space. So nothing has been decided. It came before the advisory board, and there will be community forums on that within the next month or so to discuss. Children's Aid has been very transparent after being burned before on the selling of the property without talking to the community, so they're being very cautious to ensure that everybody's on the same page.
So luxury housing is?
They're saying no. What they are saying though is that they're trying to put it that if Children's Aid decides not to sell, then potentially it may go back to luxury housing, almost like trying to turn a screw, and we're like, no, you're not going to do it like that. So that's where we are with that. There is a diversion center coming to 116th Street. Originally, it was planned for, I believe, 13 individuals. It is now being talked about potentially being 25 to 26. And so I will give you more of an update on that as it happens. The diversion center It's a center to help like mentally ill, substance abuse patients. Instead of going to having a legal issue and getting arrested, they will be more diverted to that center where they will be there for a couple of days. I think up to 5 days, trying to get access services and helping those individuals, as opposed to being arrested and being processed that way.
Seems like for the diversion centers, that the city's only opening 2 of them, one in the Bronx and then this one in CB11. And they're like brand new. It's a new idea of the police bringing people there instead of bringing them to jail or hospital. So it seems like a good idea, but
We don't
you
know.
guys are like,
We
yeah,
don't
seems
know.
like a good idea. Yeah.
So
this is all an experiment.
Yeah, it is.
at CB11. We're at CB11. We're working on putting together the Second Avenue Subway Task Force. The MTA has been doing a lot of forums within the community, and so now we're finalizing the list of the stakeholders that we'd like to invite, the area residents, the businesses, and so we're working on that. CB9 with CB11 and others have been continuing to host, and CB9 has been taking the lead on the Beyond Sims Task Force to see what will be developed there. So they've been working with the community. They've created surveys that they have circulated throughout CB11, and I'm sure through CB9 and other community boards that align or on the cusp of the statute. So that's still in flux. We at CB11 are constantly concerned of the losses of parking spaces because of the bus lanes and the redirecting of traffic. That is something that always comes up. Stay tuned. We are also meeting again. The sanitation garage task force will be meeting again because of the potential relocation to the Potamkin site on 124th Street. We are currently, Terrence Cardinal Cook, which is located on 106th Street, is looking to rezone that block because they were not part of the original East Harlem rezoning. And they're looking to rezone so that they can develop housing and expand certain services there, so that they've come before the community board. We have not gotten the application yet, and so I will let you know what happens with that. Our Friends of La Marqueta with EDC is working on finalizing a memorandum of understanding for the operation of the market and the vendor partners. And our East Harlem Land Trust is moving forward with currently 4 buildings. And then whatever else is on the list, and we attended a public charge. So I wanted to just take a minute and thank all the chairs who have been very helpful. Aldrin, I don't know if you know, but the chairs have created an informal support group where we meet, and we meet at various different apartments or restaurants. The last time was at Patmore John, because we know that there's a lot of things that we need to talk amongst ourselves and are sensitive, but we also can't hear because time does not allow. So I want to thank all my chairs for being supportive and coming out with new ideas, and you're all awesome. Thank you. And welcome to our new chairs.
And CB12 had an election on Tuesday night. So as you all know, Shah Ali has become a judge. So he's going to be inducted today. And the new chair is Richard Lewis, who is vice chair. So some of you are familiar with Richard Lewis. So he'll be joining us as the new chair of Community Board 12. At this point, if there are any council member reps who want to give any updates, council member reps?
Sure. Good morning again, everybody. So just 2 weeks ago, Councilmember Ayala with Borough President Brewer, Assemblymember Rodriguez, and State Senator Brian Benjamin, they held a community forum on the Trump administration's proposed public charge rule, which could have really detrimental impact for communities like ours that have significant immigrant populations. Just yesterday, the council member, as well as Commissioner Kamisi of the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities and Commissioner Bishop of Small Business Services, had a walkthrough in the community where they visited small businesses and spoke to owners about accessibility compliance. There are a few folks in the community that are suing small businesses, not with the intention for them to make the accommodations that are necessary, but solely to get settlements out of them. And so some small business owners have been paying $5,000 to $10,000 to settle and still leave themselves vulnerable to getting sued in the future because no accommodations are being made in their locations. So the council member and the two commissioners went out for a walkthrough yesterday just to educate some of the small business owners that have been targeted, and we're planning to hold a workshop sometime in January to engage other small businesses about both accessibility compliance and commercial lease renewals. Tomorrow, the council member will be joining the mayor and the Parks Department as part of City Hall in Borough to announce the $75 million that were allocated in the fiscal year 2019 budget for improvements on the Esplanade from East 62nd Street to East 116th Street.
Thank you. Any other council member reps? Any,
I
yes.
just want to say a quick thank you to everyone who was at the town hall last night with the council member. We talked about a lot of the issues that were raised and buses, outdoor variances. There was some lively debate, but we look forward to working on all of those issues.
Any city agency reps? You want to do a yes?
Short announcement.
What agency again?
Oh, I'm with the New York City Civilian Complaint Review Board. My name is Timothy Harrell. On January 9th, we will be having our public board meeting in the 34th precinct. The location is 99 Fort Washington Avenue. And as always, this is an effort to create a space to create a dialogue between the community and the police department in an effort to improve police-community relations. We invite the immediate precinct as well as surrounding precincts to come out, as well as the community to engage in this conversation. And we encourage everyone to come out and share their opinions, views, and concerns about police and community. Thank you.
And there was, you get us some information on a forum with young people or something like that? Is that in February or?
Yes, the date has been changed from February 5th to February 26th.
And what is that again? Can you tell me?
This is a youth summit at NYU. So this is, we have created a youth advisory council. They're actually constructing the whole thing. We're really just coming out to record the data. The panel is youth. The audience will be youth. The discussion will be controlled and conducted by youth. This is, again, to get their perspective on policing in the community, and again, in an effort to improve police-community relations. I will get information to all of your community boards, when I get back to the office.
Yes, because we also, because our office has a Young Leaders of Manhattan Advisory Board, which is like our youth board, so we'd like to get them involved in this as well. All right, thank you. All right, well, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Yeah. Bye-bye, guys. Thank you. Have a great day.
So no